To all you students out there, welcome to our virtual Ethics Club speaking event. This is the second one that we've had this year, and the first one turned out to be super successful. So thank you for coming out again. My name is Jackson Stewart, and I am the Ethics Club president this year. I first wanted to recognize the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative team here at the David Eccles School of Business. It's a lot of students that are on this call that are part of this team and help with promoting the event, designing the flyers that we send out, and everything else to make this happen. First off, I want to send a special thanks to Dr. A. Baksheshi, who is the University of Utah Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative professor and director. He's a professor of organizational behavior at the Garth building, teaches a lot of MBAs, and is one of the, I think, best professors we have at the U. I also want to send a shout out to Ren Gallagher, who is the faculty advisor for the Ethics Club and the assistant dean for finance and operations at the David Eccles School of Business. Shout out to Candace Horn. She is the administrative manager here and has been helping make all of this possible with setting up Zoom and getting with your professors to offer you extra credit for those of you that applies to. But then also huge shout out to your professors. So we have Michael Lewis, Jeff Nielsen, Coley Pine, and Sheena McFarland for being so helpful and supportive of the Ethics Club and the Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative. So now on to just a few items of business. So your extra credit was recorded when you registered for this event. So if that applied to you, there was a drop-down menu that you could select your class. If you were on this call but did not register, ensure that you do register so that you get logged for getting that extra credit. And then for business scholars, at the end of the presentation, we'll throw up the QR code so that you can scan and get your points. But now to introduce our speaker, I don't want to take too much of her time. So we have Laurel Bartmess here today. And she's a Utah native, a University of Utah alumni, entrepreneur, restaurantpreneur, former educator, nonprofit co-founder. And if that's not enough, she's a mother of two daughters, Isabel and Gwen. And today, Laurel will be giving a presentation on values, grace, and grit will predict your success. So I will hand the time over to Laurel. You please use the Q&A function that's on Zoom. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen. And with that, you can type in any question you want, and then I will address Laurel with those questions. If they're applicable to exactly what she is presenting on at the moment, then I'll interrupt her and ask the question. Otherwise, all of them will be at the end. Sound good?
Well, thank you, Jackson. It's nice meeting you. And I just want to say thank you to Dr. Abe as well as Candace for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be back. Little did I know that when I was attending the University of Utah so long ago that I would be back speaking here, and I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to start off with a little bit about who I am and how I decided to go into business and what took me there. I am a former educator. I graduated in health education and my minor was chemistry, and I taught for a bit, had children, taught a little bit more. And then about 5.5 years ago, I was working in an assisted living community. I was activities director, and I had committed to myself that I would work there for a year, and then I would change lanes and do what I really wanted to do, which was to be into business for myself. So I think I was super fortunate in that I had taken this job because it literally changed my life working in an assisted living community. I value that experience so much. And the main thing that it kind of showed me was that we're all going to get to be 80 and 90, obviously. But those people that I spent that much time with, they were in shock. You could see it in their eyes. You could see it and hear it from our conversations. They were in shock that they were there. They were at the end of their lives. And it went so fast. And that just, the more time I spent there, that was the kind of the underlying kind of lesson that I learned, that it goes so fast. And when you're towards the end of your life, you don't have choice like we do now. You don't have choice. and I've always been very respectful of life in and of itself. So that just kind of gave me great pause to really kind of think about how much do you want to do those things that have been kind of stirring in your soul all these years. And so with that kind of lesson that I was learning, along with this Sanskrit poem that I had come across, and that was hanging from this little hook in my bedroom, and I would look at it every day as I was on my bike. These two things came together, and I was like, you've got to pursue what you've always wanted to do. So the poem, I'll just read it. It's by Tagore. He's an Indian poet. I think he died around in the 1940s. But it says, spring has passed, summer is gone, and winter is here. And the song that I meant to sing remains unsung. For I've spent my days stringing and unstringing my instrument. And that wow, that just goes deep into me. And working with those residents and seeing that feeling of I haven't done what I possibly could have done rung true to me. And so with that, I was finishing up my year that I had committed to myself to work there. And I'm like, I've got to get busy. So I started looking for other jobs. I knew I had to find a different job that was more of a career job that I wanted. I wanted to go back to school and get my master's in business because I was like, I need to learn. Learning, education is power. I need to get back into school, or I need to open my own business. I need to open that restaurant that I wanted to for back then, 5.5 years ago. It had been 13 years I'd wanted to open this restaurant. And I never had done it for lots of different reasons, but mostly fear, complete fear of failing. And also listening to other people say, don't do it. Why would you do that? Keep being a teacher. But after working in this assisted living community, I was just like, it doesn't matter. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You can fail. You can lose some money, but you'll have had that experience, and that's experience I wanted. So I opened a business. I opened a restaurant, Woodland Biscuit Company. And here I am today. It's a journey that I'm still really glad to be on. And I feel pretty content, tired, but content. So with that, I'm gonna dive into kind of like what I want to talk about today, which is values, grit, and grace, and how they will determine your success. First, I kind of want to talk about what success looks like, and I think it's just different for everybody, right? So you have your own definition of success, and you got to think about that and what that means to you, what that looks like. And for me, I kind of think of success as, like hard skills and soft skills. I think of like hard success and soft success. And my hard success is being a business that's thriving, that's surviving, obviously, and that's profitable, and that gives something to the community that they need, that they value. So that if I'm successful, that would be my success. Profitable, taking care of my employees, being able to take care of my family. And then the soft kind of success is being fulfilled as a person in life. And what I need to feel that success on the soft side is business for me is this intersection between creativity and service. And that's being an entrepreneur, that's what it allows me to do, be creative and to give something back that I think is valuable to some people. It doesn't have to be to everybody. For me, for my definition of success, but for a group of people, they need to find what I do valuable enough to come. So with that, the values that I hold to be important, along with grit and grace, is like a thread that runs through those things. And we do this dance every single day for the last 5.5 years. So with that, I'm going to just kind of get into some stories that really illustrate those 3 points, and how the thread is woven right through all of them. And so to start with, I'm going to talk about values. I knew going into Woodland Biscuit Company, opening my own business, that I needed some core values. I knew that they should be short enough for me to memorize, for my staff to memorize, and that they should guide every decision. So I'd like to say that I was savvy enough and with it enough, and on top of it enough, opening a business, to have these done beforehand. But I think it was day 3 of being open at Woodland Biscuit that I wrote these down. And oh, I did want to address this of, I opened a restaurant, but before then I was at the very same time pursuing like 2 different lanes. I was interviewing for a job and looking at a building space, a restaurant space, like at the same time. And I remember going off to the second interview of this job, and I told my girls, I said, if they offer it, I'm going to take it. And my oldest one's like, why would you do that, Mom? The restaurant you wanted to do. And I was like, because it's safe, it's secure, health insurance, they'll pay for my schooling. And it was just that tug to just keep doing what I've always done, the safe road. But I go to that interview and I'm sitting there and they offer me that job. And at that moment I was like, you can't take it. You can't take it. What did you learn at the assisted living community? It's to do what you want to do. And so that was the push where it's like, you just have to step off into fear and know you might fail, but failing and doing what you loved is going to be better, or what you think you love is going to be better than never to have done it. So anyway, here I am, have my restaurant, need my core values. It's day 3. Grab a piece of paper, I write them down, and here they are. Super simple, to the point. Number 1, be honest. Number 2, be kind. Number 3, take care of each other and biscuit land. Number 4, do better than you want to do or think you can do. And number 5 is ego. We have one, check in with it. Is it helping you? Is it hurting you? Is it helping us? Is it hurting us? Number 5, though, really actually came, I was maybe 6 or 7 months into the business. And there was one person that I was just like, wow, he's got a ginormous ego and it's creating some problems. So that kind of came a little bit later, but here they are, here are core values. And I can't emphasize enough how much they are intertwined in my being and in my everyday life. And they also are really helpful in shaping the path for my employees. They know that like any choice they make, that they can just run through these and see if they need to change or keep on the path that they're on. It's so immensely helpful. It just makes my life super easy. So these are core values, and now I'm just gonna kind of dive into stories that use these as examples, along with grit and a little bit of grace, sometimes a lot of grace, to get me through the day, to keep doing what I still want to do, even though it is up and down. It's something that's still bringing me joy. The first story I want to talk about happened recently, as recent as last week. And the great thing about owning a restaurant, and probably any business, I would assume, is that like the craziest things happen to you, and they're great dinner table conversations. Like, so it's great when I go to dinner parties, or just when I come home and talk to my girls. Like, I have the funniest stories. This story isn't really funny, but it's a great example of all these things, of values, of grit, of grace. So in the industry, my industry, you can get your meat for your restaurant through like a Cisco or a US Foods, or you can find a rancher and see if you can get a cow from them. And then it's known as the beef. And I've chosen to get a beef, and this is where grit plays in, because I feel like it's taking care of a lot of different things. Environmentally, it's better to get local beef. It's taking care of my customers better because it's better meat. All these things, but it's harder because a whole cow, a whole beef takes up an enormous space. And I don't have a lot of storage space. And some of it's out in a garage that recently now has a big hole in its roof. So I don't, all of a sudden I've said, yes, Chris, I need that cow. He's like, hey, do you need a cow? I said, yes. He takes it down to get it processed, but I've got to find space. I've got to get it back up to woodland. A beef is heavy. Where am I going to put it? The roof is leaking. I don't have enough cold storage. Well, I kind of figure some stuff out, but it's been processed. I've got to go get it. I also find that there is something called cold storage. I did not know existed. You can rent space. So I go, it's early in the morning. I go over to Diamond Rental and it's cold up here in Park City. It was like when that cold hit, we're in our beanies. There's a line. It's something I do not want to be doing. I don't want to hook up a trailer. I don't want to drive to Payson, Utah to get the beef, but it's part of my value system. If I can do this, I'm doing it. I get in there, the people that are behind the counter don't have their masks on. I want them to have their masks on, but they don't. So I'm just like, I like telling myself, neutral, Laurel, go into neutral. And I just do, like, it's all fine. You know, it's going to be fine. I've got a long day ahead of me. I can't get worked up about the mask scene. And I look at him, and this is part of that grace thing, is I'm like, he's stressed out. That man with his computer, he's got a line. He doesn't have enough help, like the rest of us. He's stressed out. And so I'm just like, I feel for him, even though I want him to be wearing his mask. I want him to be taking care of me, but it's okay. Like, we just got to move on. Get my trailer. I'm in Payson. They load up my beef. I'm excited. It's like half the day is over. This is good. I can do this. Get back on the freeway. Haven't been that long on the freeway, maybe 10 minutes. I'm like, I didn't open those boxes. And there needs to be a stamp on there, a USDA, approved stamp for the cold storage to take them and for me to resell them from Woodland Biscuit, because I'm also going to resell some of it as just, if you want to buy local eggs from Woodland Biscuit, you can, like groceries. Also, they'll be on, the menu. So I've got to have the stamp. So I call them back up and I say, hey, just want to confirm that they're all stamped. She's like, well, let me see. She comes back out. She's, well, not out, but we're on the phone. I just checked. Yep, they're all stamped. But something still, I'm just like, I gotta see it for myself. And I pull off, I open the boxes. I'm in a parking lot. They're not all stamped. I'm just like, oh no. So I get back, I drive back and I call them and I say, I just want to let you know, they're not all stamped. And she's like, oh, really? Really? I get back over there and I go in and she's like, I'm sorry that happened. They're all at break. They're coming back. They'll restamp them all. I say, okay. And here's where, and we all have these moments, I think, where we're dealing with something and we're frustrated. And like, there's different ways you can go. And I always try to go about it the graceful way. And I'm like, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I'll just wait in the car. A lot of me wanted to say, but I rented a trailer. I spent $80 on this trailer and I rented it and I'm here and it was done wrong and I might not make the cutoff time for the cold storage. But like, I know now she doesn't need that information. The boys come out, they look in there and everybody's checking to make sure they really messed up. And they're like, yep, it's on there. And so they take all the boxes back in. And then eventually the woman comes out and she's like, I'm sorry, they have to rewrap every one. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'll just be out here. She comes back out again and she goes, you know what? Guess what? We're going down to cold storage tomorrow and we can take them for you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that would be great. But at the same time, I'm like, wait, wait, I rented this trailer and I just like, this is not working how I wanted to. And I'm tired and I'm frustrated. I want her to say, hey, let us take care of some of this cutting and processing costs for you because we've really put you out. None of that happened. But the thing is I have to ask myself, I have to be honest with myself, like where am I in all of this? And is it going to do anything for me to get frustrated with them? Or can I actually help them learn how to handle this? And I think it's better for me to handle it well than to handle it, in a frustrating way, because it's already a frustrating situation. And the other part of that too, I think with grace, I mean, for me, grace really is taking the space around an awkward or unfortunate or awful moment, not that this was awful or the end of the world, but making it better, putting some beauty in there, because that makes life better for all of us. So I say, okay, great. I call the cold storage. I'll take it there tomorrow. And here's the best part of this story. There's two good, really parts of this. Like part of me is like, my whole day was wasted. And they could have just said, hey, we'll take it to this cold storage place. They didn't offer that to me the day before. But there were 2 boxes left, and the guy comes out and he's grabbing the 2 boxes, and I'm going to drive back to Park City with an empty trailer. And he just looks at me and he goes, I just really want to apologize for this. We messed up, and I'm sorry. And it was the first kind of like really authentic sorry I had had. The other one from the office was like, oh, whoops. But when I got that really authentic apology, it made everything go away, like my frustrations inside go away. And I said to him, I said, it's okay. Like, I understand. I own a business, we mess up, and I understand, and let everybody know that's wrapping it that it's not a big deal. It's all going to be fine. It's like, okay, I will. So in all of that, like I had to use honesty. I had to use take care of people, do better than I want to do, because I just wanted to tell them about that trailer. I just wanted them to, handle it a little bit differently. But all in all, they handled it fine. And I connected with the man who grabbed those last 2 boxes. And I drove on back to Park City, and I had opened the boxes, some of them were open, and I grabbed some meat. I'm like, oh, look, I'm going to go home and try these, a couple different cuts that they had done. And that was exciting. And I got back over there to Diamond Rental, and the guy that had rented me the trailer in the morning was still there, and he was still frustrated because not enough staff on his part. And I handed him the meat, and I'm like, hey, look, because he knew I was going down to get some meat. And so business is hard, but it is about taking care of each other. Even though those people weren't right in my restaurant, if you handle yourself in this way that is graceful and mirrors your values, then it helps in the direction that you're going. Everything that I do, and this is hard, I think, and I never really thought about this when I decided to be a business owner. Like, you're tied to your name. And so at the meat place, I have Woodland Biscuit Company. When I'm doing work stuff, I'm tied to that name. So I'm kind of leaving this little trail. But at the same time, my value set is such as that I want to act the same way, whether I own a business or not. But owning a business does nudge you into, like, remember, you're kind of this active piece that has a name, that you've got to really honor that too. You don't just fall into the shadows if your business is thriving. And that's what you want as a business owner. So that's kind of my most recent story. Jackson, are there any questions that we need to answer so far?
Not as of now. Okay. There is one question that we can bring up at the end, though.
Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. So that's my most recent story. another, let's just get into the dish pit, the literal dish pit of the restaurant, because there are a million stories that come out of the dish pit at my restaurant. The latest one would be my daughter applying to college has used it to build her essay, one of her essays. And it kind of starts, I grew up in a dish pit and what it taught me. And there are some rules about the dish pit, but the rules, they all encompass this again. And a lot of it is to take care of each other and biscuit land, and then to do better than we want to do. And I'll tell you, when you get a fantastic dishwasher, it's life-changing. Or when you train one to become one, it's life-changing. And it's the most beautiful kind of work probably that I've ever seen in my restaurant. Almost, I mean, I would say a dishwasher that does beautiful work, it's almost like an orchestra to me, but it would be the same as like a beautiful plate of food or a beautiful interaction between a guest and my staff member. Like that, being in a dish, having somebody that great is like that. And it's a hard job, but there's a system to it, there's processes, and I teach them how to do it, or if I'm lucky enough to have a really good dishwasher there, I have them teach them. But for whatever reason, it doesn't grab, doing dishes in this kind of amazing way is not for everyone. But I keep trying to shape the path for them. And when I notice that they're not catching on, then one of us is over there kind of just like, you know what, I'm just going to help you for a little bit and we're going to go over some things. Recently, I was in the dish pit with a young teenager, and I said to him, I said, so we've been here before and we went over these few things. And one of the rules is to keep the dish pit clean. And like, you think, why keep it clean? There's dirty dishes just coming through here nonstop. But there are areas that if you don't wipe them down, if you don't, rinse out the bus tub, then it's a disaster. It's awful. It looks gross. It looks gross for us in the kitchen that have to see it. It looks gross for the servers that come in. In essence, it's not taking care of each other in biscuit land. So I get over there again, and we go through some stuff, and inevitably at some point when I'm retraining people, and there's two parts to this. When I'm retraining people, I bring up this Steve Jobs story, and I'll say, do you know who Steve Jobs is? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I tell them who he is. And then I say, when Steve Jobs was young, you may have heard this story. His father said, go paint the fence. And so Steve Jobs goes, he paints the fence, he comes back in, however long it took, I'm done. And his dad said, oh, great, let's go see. And so Steve shows them, and his dad's like, what about this part over here? And Steve goes, well, no one sees it. His dad goes, it's not painted. And Steve goes, well, nobody sees that. Why does that matter? And his dad goes, it matters to us. It matters. It should matter to you. It matters because we see it. So the dish pit is like one of those things. Not everybody sees it. So why does it matter if we keep it clean and wipe it down and don't get food on the wall or food on the floor that we don't pick up? Why does it matter? It matters because we see it, and whether it's intuitive to somebody to keep it clean or not, I feel it's my responsibility to teach them that it is important. It's kind of a respect to yourself as well as taking care of those around us. And I am, I guess, fixated on and fascinated and in love with beauty. Even the dish pit, I want to look clean, even though dirty dishes are funneling through it. I want it to be, and if it's clean, it's more beautiful. And that's where I want to be. I want to be in a clean environment. So something that that core value is something that I have to reteach because it's not intuitive to some people. This just came to my mind, another way that plays into The core values, take care of each other in Biscuit Land, and hard work, is I have a really tiny kitchen, and I love this though. So I'm in at 5 years, and like things break, especially now. I don't know, 5 might be a magic number, that things just, you use them so much equipment that they just start breaking down, and people come in and they have to fix it, or just even deliveries. But oftentimes the people that are coming in to fix, whether it be the dish machine or the range, or what have you, like they're always surprised that it's really super clean. They're like, how long have you been in business? 5 years. Wow, this is a clean kitchen. And it's that kind of goes right back to our values of doing better than we want to do. Because I don't want to keep the dish pit that clean, nor do I want to wash the floor on my hands and knees. But we started doing that when we opened, because you can see under everything, and it's a small kitchen. So, we sweep and then we get down on our hands and knees, and then you can see what's leaking, and what dropped off the counter is now underneath the fridge. All those things, when you're a little bit grittier, when you work a little bit harder, and you do better than you want to do or think you can do, is kind of just what we do. And it makes it hard, but I have to say, the people that come in, and even a lot of times guests that know me will come into the kitchen and, where's Laurel? And they do see a clean kitchen. They do feel safe eating there. If they can come in and see that, oh my God, like the kitchen is as clean as the dining room, that, it's a good feeling. And I don't ever have to worry because people are going to come in there, but how we hold to our core values doesn't make me worry. And I think that is really a beautiful thing about really strong core values, is that you don't ever have to second guess what you're doing if you filter everything through them. About 2 years ago, I had some wonderful employees that had been with me for a couple of years. It was a really good dynamic for the most part, until it wasn't. And they decided to break off. And I think a couple of things, and we can go back to the core values, and the grace and the grit, because their egos kind of became a little too inflated with the success that they were having and how much people adored them at the restaurant. And so, as great as they were, things ended, and they started their own business and left. And at that moment, when it blindsided me in one way, and another way I kind of knew, but it was kind of instantaneous. And they took some other people, and it was so emotional for me that I wanted to be done. And it was hard. It was hard. Like, my ego was part of it. And there was so much me that thought, will people keep coming? She was a front end manager. He was a cook. And the thing is I said to myself, so much of me did want to quit because I was so short staffed, but the grit of this, threaded in, was like, you're not finished with this. I mean, at some point I might be finished with this business because I am an entrepreneur, but like digging in and saying, you've got to be gritty. I call it my woodland grit. Like, you've got to stick this out. Like, any business is going to have a shakeup. And so you got to move through this to become stronger. And I also said this, all my customers, they know me as well, and they know who I am. And I haven't done anything differently. I am who I am. And because of my core values. And if they have the same core values I do, they'll keep coming. And sure enough, they did. They missed the other people, but they valued what I had created, and they still valued me. And my core values, like that pulled me through. And I didn't have to ever explain anything. I'm always, this is who I am, and it makes my life super simple. I also had to, though, with that grit and with grace, handle that situation delicately, because I was so hurt emotionally that they had left in this kind of very abrupt way. I, you know, I wanted to like scream out, like, that was so unfair and that was so wrong. But like, this is not the right thing to do, because I still care about those people. And I had to check in with my ego. I had to say, which is core value number 5, like, did you have a part in this? If so, what? How can you learn from this so it doesn't happen again? So you don't become that surprised again? It taught me immense stuff. Was it accompanied by a lot of hurt that's still there? Sure, but that's part of, I think, the beauty of living is that, hurt doesn't go away. It probably shouldn't, because it helps you learn and helps you remember not to do the same things you did to maybe end up in that spot. So that was a great kind of, not great, but I think if you check in with your ego and try to learn from all of it, from all the little mistakes that you have or the bumps, you only, hopefully, if you're still in a learning mindset, you just progress, and you don't do those things again. So we talked about the dish pit. We talked about Steve Jobs. That doing better than you want to do or think you can do, that is just a consistency thing that just, oh boy, it's intense. What's beautiful is that some of my staff that have been with me a long time, the core values are so ingrained in them that they're super reflective as well. I have one employee who's like, I really need the servers to do this with some ticket hanging things. And I'm like, well, how are they going to know you need to do that? And she's like, well, I'm going to tell them. And I'm like, do you want to write them a note as well? And she's like, yes, I do. So she brings it up in morning meeting, how she would like the tickets folded and hung. And then she also puts a little note by the ticket bar that's like, what would Steve Jobs do? So, so it makes me feel good that she's like, she gets it. She really gets it. But also with that doing better than you want to do or think you can do, I think it's imperative, but there's also kind of a healthy, there's a point where you can become crazy if you don't manage all you're doing. And it's kind of up to a point, because I could pretty much stay at Wood and Biscuit until 9 o'clock at night, every night. I close at 2. I'm a breakfast lunch place. If I always did, like if I never cut it off, I'm there till 6, and that's after closing at 2. But at some point, there is a point where you have to check yourself and say, it's okay to stop for now and return to this. What else? Let's talk a little bit about being honest with yourself. Because honesty is my core value number 1, but I think it can go lots of different ways. But mainly for me, it's being honest with myself in what I'm doing, and objective. So I've found, and I think this is fascinating with food, it's really easy to say, not for me personally, but I found a lot of my cooks say, oh, it's good enough. And because we'll create something or they'll create something, and I'll be like, yes, let's taste it. And the instinct is go, that's good, because it really is, it's good. And I said, well, what about this? I'm like, I usually say, does this change your life? And then we pause, what needs to change? So being honest with yourself really helps you, and not letting your ego be hurt if it's not so great, and to just step forward and keep doing iterations of whatever you're working on is, I believe, super helpful. Is it exhausting? Yes. My poor kids, every time I change the menu, which is usually every season, I mean, they'll get some dishes that they've had a lot. And now I've learned just kind of like, it's like an appetizer. Okay, try it out, but it's the same thing and a different iteration until we go, oh my God, like that's amazing. But it is exhausting, and it takes grit and honesty to keep checking yourself and saying, is it really good? Is it going to bring value in the way I want it to bring value? And whether it's with food or a product, a different, something that you're not eating, whether it's tangible or intangible, is that service that you're delivering, is it needed? Does it bring value? Is it better than most? So I think being honest with what you're doing and what you create is really super important in running a business. And or really, like, my daughter's in the process of applying for college, and she's writing all these essays, and then she funnels them through me. And I think in the end it's good, but my kids know that I'm brutally honest. And so I'm not just, and like, there are pieces that usually I say there are pieces that are good, but this needs work, and it ends up being a lot more work. It ends up being a lot more work making the same dish 7 or 8 or 9 times, and or being honest enough to say, this is like worth continuing down the road and fleshing out, or maybe I don't do this anymore. So you've got to know when to move on, and not be so in love with a concept or an idea that it is taking up all your time, or also do better than you want to do up until that point. Like, she finally had to, and this is a phrase from Seth Godin, who is he's an amazing author and great business person. But you got to be able to ship it. You've got to put the good hard work in. But at some point it has to ship. Her essay has to go. This menu item is either got to be shipped and we got to try it out, but I've got to stop spinning. So there's a point to work really hard. Better that it's comfortable, because I think we all want to be comfortable, but comfortable isn't what, depending on what your definition of success is, it might not get you success if you're just staying comfortable. It's when you're working really hard and being really gritty, when usually you come upon what you're striving for. So it's hard and it's tiring, but it's if that's kind of your definition of success, is to be better than most, or to provide this thing of value, it can be worth it at the end. What else? Oh, let's talk a little bit. I do want to talk about ego. It came a little bit later in my my journey. It didn't come right when I opened the doors, that core value. And I don't even know that I was aware of my own ego as much as I would say I am now, because I think ego is not a bad thing, but you have to check in with it a lot. Recently, this is another pretty recent story. I've been trying to hire some people for the kitchen. It's interesting during COVID for so many reasons. And this also illustrates kind of like learning how, when you are in business, or really when you're doing whatever, like, learn from the past. So I meet this person for coffee and an interview. He has lots of experience, and this person went on, and he had never been to Woodland Biscuit Company, but it was he didn't stop talking, really. He didn't have a lot of questions for me. It was a lot about all his experience, what he could do for me, and all about the pay. It was really interesting. It was all about the pay, a benefits package, vacation, and clearly he hadn't been to Woodland Biscuit and I'm not, he had worked at a lot of resorts. And I said, oh, nope, I don't have that yet. I don't have that. I mean, I could guarantee him a fair pay and an increase, but he kind of wanted that from right out of the gate. And so it was fascinating. And as I'm going along, a big part of me wanted to be like, but he has this experience. But the other part of me, because I was being honest with myself, I'm like, is this a person that you even want to work with? Because his ego is so gigantic. But then the other part of me was like, but it could help. It could really help. And then the other part, so it's just like, oh my God, it was so hard. But at the end of our time, and I said, well, really what you need to do, and what I always do if they've never eaten at Woodland Biscuit Company, so I got to come check it out. They have to come check it out and spend like an hour or two in the kitchen and just watch on a really busy day, the intensity of it. And because either they've never been there and they don't know how intense it can be, or they've been out front and are romanticizing about the environment or what have you, and think it's simple in the back. So I say to him, so you can come out for a couple hours and you should just watch. And then if you feel like joining us, it's a trial 2-week period. And then we get to know each other. And it's after 2 weeks, we talk. Is it a fit? It might not be a fit for you. It might not be a fit for me. And then we go and I pay you and there's no harm, no foul. And so he says, well, I'd like to be paid to come out and watch. And I had never had somebody want to be paid. He's like, my time is very valuable. I want to be, and I sat there right there checking myself, like my ego. I'm like, that is the craziest thing. But then on the other hand, I was like, well, wait, are you just offended because of whatever reason? Or is his time is valuable? That's why I was so upset with my empty trailer driving back home, because nobody realized that my time was valuable. But so here I'm dealing with, I really need help. He's really experienced. That could be really helpful. But this ego that was like crazy high, but big pause. I'm like, do I say yes? I'll pay this guy. And he picked up on that I was just like that surprised. And he goes, well, I'll come. I'll come. And I said, that's great. We'll make you breakfast. He comes, he watches. I sit down with him. He's like, well, he then went into the money thing. And it just so was against it was like he wasn't interested in building this restaurant with us. He was really interested in himself. And when I was really honest with myself, I was like, this was 45 minutes of him just talking about himself. And so as hard as it was and is to just cut my losses, because that was so much time and emotional energy wrapped up in an interview and possibility. But if I was honest with myself, I didn't even really like being around him. And his ego was so big that it would have been hard. I think when your ego is so big, and when I questioned him, he'd been through a lot of jobs, which was a sign of he's not fitting in very well. And his recent one had invited him back, and it was COVID related. But I just I just had to be honest with myself and do the hard, gritty thing of I just got to cut my losses. And so I called him up and said, I just don't think that we're the right fit. And he said, okay, no problem. That's cool. But it is a never ending, feels like treadmill that you're on, I think, with business, that you've got to realize that's what you signed up for. But again, the core values are your tools, and they really, if they're strong and you use them and they are who you are, then you'll be okay. And I think there are different levels of values, and whatever your level, like what your values are, you have to ask yourself, are they attracting the same type of customer that I want to be successful? And whatever your values are, that's what generally attracts your staff and your customers. And if you're not getting the right customers and the right staff, it might be because your values aren't where they need to be, and you have to reevaluate those. Speaking to that, I once was in the process of hiring this man who, again, I was excited about. Came with tons of experience. He was older, and I thought, and he had managed some restaurants, and I thought, this is going to be great. And he was going to be out front serving for a while, and then I was going to move him to the back. But he said a couple things to some of my servers. No, they were back of house kitchen staff, and that just rubbed me the wrong way. And part of me, I was like, you got to keep him. You need a body in here. He's got experience. The other part of me is like, does not match my core values. He just said something slightly, and I mean, my expectation and values are sky high, and he said slightly something off, not even off color, but it bothered me. And I was just like, back to my core values. They didn't fit. Like that he would make a remark like that to a younger person in my kitchen didn't show me that he respected me or that he had a lot of respect for the idea of respect. And so I had to let him go. And he had really done nothing absolutely like egregious in any way. And more often than not, I let somebody go early that clearly to me doesn't align. Sometimes to my staff, they're like, well, what? And I'm like, and when I go into a little more detail and then talk about our core value, they're like, you're right. And sometimes I let people go generally because once I had to let somebody go because a staff member that I value so much, she was so frustrated by him. It was in the 2-week period, and he wasn't really getting it anyway, to be honest. Had a problem between the ketchup and the red pepper jelly, in a bigger way than that too, with trying to figure things out. So I think when you stick to those core values and are unrelenting with them and grit, and you add in that grace component, they really do steer you towards success. Yeah. I was going to, last, I'm looking at the time and time has flown. So Jackson, tell me where we're at. And I do want to hold up one last thing and then maybe we can go into some questions. Where are we at, Jackson, on time?
Yeah, that sounds great. We do have 5 more minutes, but I know students would like to stay around to hear just their question. So
Okay.
maybe if you could just kind of do your closing remarks, we'll roll into questions and maybe end like 5 minutes after you are.
Awesome. Sounds great. Okay. Thank you for the little update. So I guess just to kind of tie it up, when I was thinking about what I was going to say, I was like, so where does this get you? Having this, a life of, what does it get you? Where does it get you? A life of high values and unrelenting grit and grace. And I just started writing down like adjectives of how I feel, like what I feel like living this kind of life. And they kind of fall into 2 camps. Here they are. So this is kind of the not so great camp. And this one's the amazing camp. But the funny thing is it really is all together at any one moment. All these experiences I have that are basically stories that I could tell at a great dinner party, they leave me tired, scared, and this is just being very real and honest, lonely. When you're a leader, it's a very lonely job, so you have to navigate that. Sometimes feeling very broken. Even in this negative column, though, I always feel creative, which is sometimes like exhausting. I feel connected still. I feel there's an essence of simplicity in my life. I feel capable. I feel worried. On the flip side, in this camp, I feel satisfied. I feel complete-ish. Not that I'm like, I figured it all out, but it's like this, is been the first time in my life, and I'm not young at all, where I'm just like, I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. And I want to do more. And sometimes you're not at the place where you can do more, and you have to realize that. I feel strong, fearless, wiser, creative, smart. I feel more connected with myself, and that when I'm 80 or 90, I'm not going to have that look of just complete sadness. I feel capable and I feel happy. So that's where, but at the same time, I'm exhausted, but it doesn't matter because it's all my choice, and my values have steered me to where I am today, which is like successful in both areas of, a business that hasn't gone under, even during COVID, and a personal life that makes me feel like I'm doing exactly what I've always wanted to do.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Laurel. I'll dive into questions if you're cool with that. So, okay, awesome. The first question is from Elizabeth Porter, and she's asking, can you teach grace, and if so, how?
I think the best way to learn grace is by example. And so, yes, I think example is teaching, but I think people have to be open to it as a concept. And so I guess, the former teacher in me, I guess maybe I'd want to say yes. I think when you're surrounded by it, I think it's easier to learn. But if you're not surrounded by grace, and haven't grown up with it, or what that looks like, and because we develop based on how we grew up, and then, everything in between. And so, yeah, I would say that I do think that you could teach it, but the people would have to be open to it. And I think it's best learned through example. And I think that it's funny because I use that word a lot during morning meeting, and how we are taking care of customers, and how to handle situations, because every day a situation comes up. And I use that word. I'm like, how we handle this is what goes out to the rest of the world. And we're going to handle it with honesty. Like, we messed up and we're sorry, but let us try to fix it in the best way we know how. And how we fix it is that grace. Like I said, it's that, like, there's this issue, and then everything around it is what we fill with grace of taking care of that issue that we created. And so yeah, I think yes and no. It's easier to kind of absorb, I think, but I think the best situation would be absorbing it from someone or a leader that exhibits it, but also talks about it at the same time, and then and reminds you to practice it. I actually let a woman go 2 days in because I saw her, and she was older than I was, interact with the customer, and she was in the restaurant industry. And it was so off-putting to me, and I didn't feel like I could teach her. And that's, again, something I've learned, like it's not about me, it's about we. And I've got to surround my staff, they have to follow the core. She just didn't have it. And I thought and she had ego too, because she'd been in the business. And so I let her go. So yes and no, combination.
Excellent. I completely agree with that. It's just as important for leaders to show a good example as it is to kind of put words to what they're doing to kind of help the teaching aspect. So I love that. Another question is, many restaurants are struggling or have even closed as a result of COVID. So how is Woodland Biscuits doing? How have you had to adapt? How have your values influenced decisions you've had to make in dealing with COVID? So a lot of questions there, but would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the questions. This is fun. So, oh my God, unbelievable. Unbelievable. March 16th, I'll never forget. Yeah, just as like you close the doors. So a couple things that I believe about when life comes at you in this sort of way, where you didn't expect it and you didn't plan for it, and it's like blindsided you when you are blindsided. That you, and I think this is helpful to any person, like it's an opportunity. Yes, is it scary? Is it just so scary and so shocking and so emotional, all those things. But I knew that week, I was like this is scary, but this could be an opportunity for me. And how I looked at that, not in this like I'm going to become like amazingly wealthy or anything like that, but I'm like, how is this? And this is an opportunity to maybe try some new things. So I think you have to look at change, especially if it's forced upon you or not, as an opportunity. And in business, if you should be constantly looking at doing things differently. How's it working for you? And do you need to be doing things differently? So at Woodland Biscuit, it's company. I always don't put the company on because it's a long name. And sometimes I regret that choice. But anyway, so at Woodland Biscuit Company, there's a wait generally on the weekends, and we've never had reservations, mostly because it's like, I didn't even want to go down that road for so many reasons. But COVID, I knew, I'm like, I need to manage the crowd because the wait time now is 45 minutes. Now I have less tables. No, somehow I need more tables. So then I'm like, oh, we're going to start seating outside, but I need to implement a reservation system. That was scary to me. I didn't want to do that. That's a lot more work. It's a lot more money. Who's going to manage that? I'm doing more than I should be doing on both sides of this restaurant. Now it's a reservation system, but that's where that gritty part comes in again. It's like, well, yeah, it's going to be hard at first, but could it really be best in the end, even if we weren't in COVID? And the answer, absolutely, 100%. It was hard. Hard for the people that have to implement it out front. I'm still working through that with some of the people because we don't like change. We want to hold on to our old ways. So COVID, this type of thing has helped me just kind of, that was a mindset I already had, but I had to force myself actually to do it. It's easier to do nothing. I took the opportunity to change my website. COVID, I've had to be a lot more engaging through my website with my customers than, because I just kind of want to stay with my head in food, but that doesn't work either. So COVID has made me definitely pivot. And also, I think when you're in business, it's really about taking care of the customer. If I'm thinking about that hard success, yeah, I need to stay in business, but how am I going to do that is by taking care of the customer and making them feel safe in a time when they don't. That's why I encountered the guy at Diamond Rental without the mask. I don't feel like he's doing me a good service of making me feel safe, but I knew that that's what I wanted to provide for my customers. So we opened, we stripped down a lot of our tables inside, more seating outside, reservations for half of the tables, and the other is still walk-in. So I'm meeting both needs there. And luckily, I had a really strong foundation going into this and following and product. And that's just so, and I think a lot of people have missed dining. And so they feel like they can trust me because of the core values that I have and the product I give. But and so they have come back in spades. So that is good. To speak to really right this instant, as of yesterday, I pivoted again and I decided to, are we still on?
Yes, we're still on. I just wanted to get that code up there for the students.
But as of yesterday, I saw this spike in COVID happening, and I believe it's real. But I still want to be in business, and so I decided to close the restaurant for a month and rethink about how I want the winter to be for my restaurant and what it's looking like. So I'll reopen in December, and it's looking like a different model for me to get me through the winter, maybe more private dining, because now my outside tables are gone. And so more private dining. I'm going to do some more. I'm in an old building that was a general store. And so I'm turning it kind of back into a store during the day. So we're going to do some different things, but I pivoted again because my staff was getting very, very thin. I have not been successful hiring people that are wanting to be like part of something bigger than themselves like this. It's more of just like a job for a little bit. So I've said to myself, who do I want to work with? There's a few staff members I really want to work with. What can we do with that? And how can I serve the public? And what I'm hearing is that people want to feel safe, but they still want to go out to eat. So that's what I'm going to try to provide going through the winter. So yeah, so I pivoted again with COVID, and yeah, it's been rough, but it's teaching me tons. And now, I mean, aside from the fact that it's devastating and I hate that, I feel like it's interesting to watch human behavior through all of this, and what can we learn and how can we be part of the solution instead of being part of the negativity. That's where I am with COVID right at this moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Laurel. That is all the time we have today. Unfortunately, I would love to ask you more questions, but I want to be cognizant of students' time and your time. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic hour to spend with you.
It's been wonderful with you. Thank you. You can reach out through my email if you have any questions, Jackson, or anyone else. It's right on the front page of my website. Yeah, I'd love to be helpful if anybody has any more questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bartmess. We appreciate it very much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Buddy, what?